It was a busy weekend for Caitlin Clark, maybe too busy. Culminated last night with a blowout loss to the Liberty. It was Clark's worst game as a pro. She had as many turnovers as points in Indiana's 36-point loss. 3 points on 1 of 10 shooting from the floor. It's already the third time in 11 games as a pro she has scored fewer than 10 points. That only happened once in her 139-game college career at Iowa. Now, that game last night came on the heels of a Fever victory over the Chicago Sky Saturday, but the lasting image was this. Clark getting shoulder checked by Chennedy Carter, which was eventually upgraded to a flagrant 1 after the fact. The Fever picked up their second win of the season in that game, but still only a better record than one team, the Mystics. So that is why they are only power ranked 1 spot ahead of the Mystics, number 11 out of 12 in our very latest power rankings at CBSSports.com. The unbeaten Sun remain on top, followed by the Liberty and the 2-time defending champion Aces. Let's get our WNBA analyst Erica Ayala in here. Erica, we're 48 hours removed from that game that had that shove. I mean, the Fever have already played another game since then, yet this is still the number 1 story in sports. So I ask you, what kind of a dialogue is this going to shape for the rest of the season, and what might we see when these two teams face off in a couple of weeks again?
Oh boy. Well, I fear that the dialogue that is going to follow this is the dialogue that has followed Caitlin Clark into the WNBA, which is very interesting because in January we were talking about Caitlin Clark after a loss to the Ohio State University, getting run over and people wanting her to toughen up after being hit by people who arguably shouldn't have been on the court. And it was all about, let's not change the rules of basketball for Caitlin Clark for one player. Then we get to the WNBA, and there are so many takes about so many things that should change in the WNBA because Caitlin Clark is not scoring. It's almost as if you go to the pros and you're kind of playing with adults. And yeah, things get a little tougher. The stakes are higher. The teams are better. The players are better. That should be the conversation, but it won't be, at least if history tells us anything from this short season already. Unfortunately, we're focused on things that really aren't that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. I think what's also interesting is we're seeing the frustration for the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark bubble over. We are seeing the hip check by Chennedy Carter, but there have been multiple, we didn't put that on the graphic, but Caitlin Clark already has 2 technicals in her short WNBA season. And this is not to vilify one player over another. It's like I said, the stakes are higher, the players are better, and this is what happens when you go to the pros. And a lot of pros have been telling us that. So when these two teams face off again, I think what the prevailing message is going to be what Teresa Weatherspoon said. What her player Chennedy Carter did was unacceptable. She's talked to her team. And I think what we're also going to see is that these are teams that are fighting and clawing for a playoff spot. And right now, Chicago's winning that race over Indiana. Indiana Fever are going to have to figure some things out if they want to be a team. What we were talking about in the preseason was how they were, I think it was about a dozen or so games where they were within 10 of a win, and they just couldn't get over the hump. Now they're going to have to figure that out. So they're going to have to get over some of the narratives that are permeating in media and focus on what this team needs to do. And unfortunately, that does mean that they're going to have to get over how the game is being called. We have had Nneka Ogwumike in the past talk about officiating. Elena Deladon talk about how she feels that she's been being bully-balled in the league. That's just a part of the game. So I'm hoping what will happen is that we see these two teams get physical, get aggressive to get a win. I hope what we start to see dissipate is this Caitlin Clark narrative versus the rest of the WNBA.
The Fever have played 2 more games than everybody else. They've played 5 more games than some teams. How important is this 5-day stretch here where they can take a breather and maybe finally, for the first time, really get to practice with one another going into this next phase of the season later on this weekend?
It's critically important. In Caitlin Clark's first game in the WNBA in the regular season, her head coach, Christy Sides, made it clear that it was going to be tough to make adjustments if they had to on the fly because they have not been home. They've been on the road. You don't have practice. That's tough, especially when you're running your offense through a rookie guard. And so hopefully this will be a time for the Fever to get some rest, to recover, but also take a good look at film and see, again, what they need to do to be better. They did get that win against Chicago. That's a good win for them. They had to gut it out, grind it out, but now they have to see where they can improve in other areas. And it's been a gauntlet. They've played Connecticut twice already. They're about to play, they just played the New York Liberty again. They're going to get Las Vegas soon. This is a tough stretch, but they got to figure it out.
This is the number one story all over the country, but the number one team is a team that's kind of gone under the radar, the Connecticut Sun, because they weren't expected to be the number one team, and all they've done is win every single game they've played. They're number one in our power rankings for a reason. How have they done it, Erica?
Well, I personally have a little bit of a gripe with anyone who didn't think Connecticut was going to be a number one team, or at least one of the top three teams, because they've been in that role in the last, if I'm being conservative, I want to say 5 or so seasons. This is a team where they have Alyssa Thomas started off against Caitlin Clark with a triple-double, someone who was snubbed, had the most number one votes for MVP, but then the split vote ended up missing out on what could have been an MVP year for Alyssa Thomas. Starts with a triple-double. Stephanie White just announced as Coach of the Month. This is a well-oiled machine. Dejanay Carrington is back healthy, is able to produce on offense, and of course is with her shutdown defense as usual. This is a very, as I said, well-oiled machine, very good team. And honestly, I think maybe even more than losing in some of the finals and semifinals, the snub of Alyssa Thomas in the estimation of the Connecticut Sun might have given them the chip and the edge that they need to get off to such a hot start.
They have the winless Mystics up next and then a showdown with the Liberty this weekend. Erica Ayala with us here breaking down the WNBA. Full power rankings at cbssports.com. And no games tonight, but 3 WNBA games tomorrow, including one right here on CBS Sports Network. The Phoenix Mercury taking on the Red Hot Storm. Seattle going for a 5th consecutive win. That's Tuesday at 10 Eastern.